Alien girl turned to stone and the human who sacrificed 10 years of life to save her. Victor Shaw felt each step as if he were facing death itself. The planet Nephis, a desolate world of nothing but sand, stone, and unbearable heat. The ground beneath his feet seemed to sink, swallowing each step, sending thin plumes of dust into the air. The heat from the twin suns beat down on him like a burning whip, sweat dripping down his face. The burning sensation on his shoulders was no small challenge, despite the fact that he had discarded his thermal armor 3 hours ago as it had become a searing frying pan. "Damn, Nephis is one giant steamer," Victor muttered, wiping the sweat dripping down his brow. Beneath the shadow of the massive sand dunes, he looked ahead toward a distant range of mountains, where, according to a map they had received from an unreliable source, an ancient temple, hidden secrets about the transmutation matrix, an artifact rumored to have the power to change one thing into another. He couldn't afford to waste time, and perhaps the heat would turn him into ash before he even found it. Suddenly, a soft chit sound broke the silence from behind. Rhea stepped up beside Victor, her feet moving lightly over the sand, unaffected by the harshness of the environment. Rhea was an alien girl with vibrant yellow skin like pure metal and long silver hair that shimmered under the twin suns. She gazed toward Victor with deep gray eyes, as though she could see right through everything. Rhea was unlike anyone Victor had ever met. She was an archaeologist, an expert in foreign civilizations, and of course the only one who could help him uncover the transmutation matrix. "At this rate, we should reach the temple by the end of the week, right?" Rhea said with a light laugh, a slight smile appearing between the dusty haze. Victor raised an eyebrow, sensing a hint of sarcasm in her voice. "Hey, it's not like I could go any faster without carrying that artifact bag on my back," he replied, glancing at Rhea's heavy backpack. She shrugged, her gray eyes still fixed ahead. "I'm just making sure we don't miss anything important. Besides, I don't think you'd be able to keep a 1,000-year-old stone in that backpack without my help." Victor couldn't help but chuckle. "Rhea, I'm not a mercenary because I like to carry ancient artifacts. I'm just in it for the money." He looked at her, noticing that her smile didn't seem to fade. Although their relationship had begun as a work partnership, from the early days when he provided security for her during excavations, Victor could feel something changing between them. Rhea wasn't just a colleague anymore, but the only one who could make him laugh in moments like this. But there was something he didn't dare admit. He was beginning to feel more connected to her than just as a coworker. "Rhea, how far have we come?" Victor asked, glancing at the screen on his wrist, trying to find some comfort in tracking their journey. "We've covered 15 kilometers in 5 hours, she replied, her tone slightly as though double-checking the map, even though everything had been meticulously planned. 15 kilometers in 5 hours. Feels like I've been running a marathon all day, Victor responded, pretending to sigh humorously. But if there's something worth finding in all this rubble, I might have to skip dinner tomorrow. Rhea looked at him, a smile briefly crossing her lips. So you don't mind eating recycled 3-day-old food while I find the artifact, right? They continued walking across the sand, the light from the twin suns relentlessly beating down on them as if testing their endurance. But despite their exhaustion, neither Victor nor Rhea showed any sign of stopping. Each step seemed to bring them closer to their goal, to the place where they hoped to change everything. So, what exactly is the transmutation matrix? Victor spoke up after a brief silence, his voice slightly tired but still filled with curiosity. Rhea looked at him, her gray eyes lighting up as she mentioned the artifact. This isn't just any ordinary artifact, Victor. The transmutation matrix is an ancient technology capable of changing matter at the atomic level. It can turn one object into anything its owner desires. Metal, stone, even forms of energy, she explained, her tone filled with passion and science. It's like the philosopher's stone in legend, but stronger and far more dangerous. Victor raised an eyebrow, unable to believe what he had just heard. Turn something into something else? Are you talking about something that can create an entirely new universe just by transforming an object? I mean, we could. I don't know. Turn sand into gold? Rhea chuckled, but it quickly turned serious. Yes, but it can also turn anything into stone, or worse, completely destroy something. The so-called transmutation matrix is a mix of science and mysticism, and according to ancient records, it was hidden away by past civilizations because of its potential danger. Victor glanced off into the distance, where the undulating mountains began to appear through the thick fog. Sounds like something that, if someone gets their hands on it, they could rule the world, he said, his tone laced with doubt. Rhea nodded. Not just ruling the world, its power that could change the very structure of a civilization. It could create new life, or even destroy an entire planet in the blink of an eye. Victor stopped walking and looked into Rhea's bright eyes. He could feel the seriousness in her every word. But what he felt even more was the risk, the strange allure she had for this artifact, and it made him feel a bit uneasy. So, we're hunting for something that could destroy the universe if it falls into the wrong hands, right? Victor smiled, trying to ease the tension in the air. So, does that make me the hero or the villain? Rhea laughed, then turned her gaze back toward the distant temple. Definitely the hero, as long as you're not tempted by its power. Victor looked in the direction she was staring, where the ancient buildings, long buried under sand, only left traces of a once glorious civilization. I don't think I'll be tempted, he replied, but he couldn't deny the thrill this artifact brought. But I think we'll face something much bigger than we imagined. Rhea stopped, bent down to pick up a small rock and tossed it forward. It might be a challenge, or it might be a nightmare, she said with a half smile. But either way, we're going to find it. Victor turned to look at her, a teasing glint in his eyes. You know I won't be able to resist this, right? Exactly, Rhea said, her voice soft but certain. That's why we'll go together, face it together, and take responsibility together. They continued walking through the desert, despite the scorching heat that was burning their bodies. The deeper they moved into the ruins of a dead civilization, the more they realized that this quest wasn't just about finding an artifact. It was a journey to uncover a hidden truth, something that could change everything, and perhaps change them forever. After more than 3 days of crossing the searing dunes and the harsh terrain of Nephis, Victor and Rhea finally reached the foot of a hill, where an ancient temple was said to contain the transmutation matrix, according to the map. The temple lay in a deep valley, surrounded by desolate mountain ranges, and only the faint light from the twin suns allowed them to see the path leading inside. Victor looked up, his eyes covered by dust, but still, he couldn't help but feel the majesty of the ancient temple. The massive stone columns, nearly 30 meters tall, stood like eternal guardians, their surfaces worn with moss and covered in sand. Each column had strange symbols and carvings etched deeply into them, like ancient paintings telling a story no one could fully understand. The marks of time seemed to have merged with memories buried deep within, leaving an air of mystery, as though everything in the temple carried secrets that could never be erased. It feels like we're walking into an ancient tomb, doesn't it? Victor muttered, his eyes scanning the strange symbols on the stone columns. Rhea nodded, her gaze focused on the carvings on the stone. Yes, these are the remnants of the Nephian civilization, the people who had the ability to change matter. And the transmutation matrix was the key to their success. She paused for a moment, adding, "But there's something I'm worried about. The power of the matrix is immense. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could destroy an entire planet." Victor looked into her bright eyes, sensing the seriousness in her every word. He knew this was true. But now, with the artifact just a step away, all his worries seemed to be overshadowed by the excitement of what lay ahead. They continued walking through the stone archway, passing damaged walls, and entered the temple. Inside, the air was cold and damp, as if time had stopped flowing in this place for thousands of years. The stone columns inside the temple still stood tall, although they were covered in thick moss and a layer of dust. As they ventured deeper, the stone columns not only grew more rugged, but also featured more intricate carvings. Ancient symbols were interwoven with depictions of strange creatures, as if they were whispering secrets that humanity could never comprehend. The murals could be maps, or perhaps directions leading them to where the matrix was hidden. "It feels like we're being watched," Victor said as they moved through a long corridor, the faint light from glowing stones illuminating his face. Rhea paused briefly, her hand brushing over the stone columns as her eyes scanned each character. I feel it too. But this isn't strange, is it? This is an ancient temple, and perhaps someone has been guarding it for thousands of years. Victor didn't say anything further, but his unease grew. As they moved through the dim rooms, they discovered various traps cleverly placed to protect the artifact. Some walls could collapse with a single misstep, and the floor could open into deep pits filled with sharp spikes if they weren't careful. Rhea studied the ground closely and noticed symbols indicating a safe path. Step only on these markings, or we'll be trapped here, she warned. Victor nodded, allowing her to lead the way, moving cautiously. They passed through corridors, pushing heavy stone doors, feeling the dense, mysterious air as if the temple still lived, carrying the essence of a once powerful civilization. Eventually, they stopped before a large chamber, where a massive stone table stood in the middle of the room. On the table lay a small box etched with glowing symbols, a soft light emanating from the carvings. This was the transmutation matrix. Victor stepped closer to the box, his heart racing. This is it, Rhea, the matrix. Rhea moved forward, the light from the box reflecting on her face. Yes, but it could also be the end of everything. She tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with determination. Be careful, Victor. Don't let it turn us into destroyers. The faint, ethereal light from the transmutation matrix illuminated the room, and the strange symbols on the box began to glow brighter as Rhea approached. She studied the carvings intently, her fingers lightly tracing over the markings. These symbols didn't seem like mere drawings. They were a language, a sophisticated code that only someone like her could decipher. Victor stood behind her, sensing a strange energy emanating from the box. He didn't understand all the technology, but the atmosphere was growing dangerously thick. Rhea, be careful, he warned, but his voice carried a hint of hesitation. Rhea either didn't hear him or perhaps didn't want to listen. She continued to study the box, her gray eyes shining with intense curiosity. Her finger touched a particular symbol, and immediately the air in the room seemed to freeze. The symbols on the box started to emit a soft green light, which quickly intensified. Get your hands off, Victor shouted, rushing toward her, but it was too late. A blinding beam of light shot out from the box, striking Rhea's chest. She didn't have time to react, only feeling a chilling cold spread throughout her body. The blue light pierced her skin, making every cell in her body feel like it was freezing. Her once bright yellow skin turned into a dull gray, and her fingertips began to stiffen, as if covered in cold stone. Rhea gasped, trying to scream, but no sound came out. She felt herself sinking beneath an icy layer, unable to move, unable to breathe. Her body slowly stiffened, the stone creeping from her chest, up her neck, and then gradually spreading to her fingers, her hands trembling. Victor stood frozen, unable to believe what was unfolding before his eyes. He watched Rhea, his trusted companion, the one he had shared jokes with, now turning into a living stone statue right before him. Clouds of dust from the shattered stones around them began to rise into the air, adding to the eerie and grim atmosphere. No, Victor shouted, rushing forward, reaching out to grab her hand, but as he touched her, he only felt the cold, rigid stone. Cracks began to appear on the stone surface of her body, deep fissures like wounds that couldn't be healed. Her eyes were wide open, now clouding over with terror. Her skin had completely turned to stone, but her eyes still moved, showing that life was still fighting within her. Rhea, no, don't leave me. Victor knelt down, holding her stone body tightly in his arms. Her weight was too much now, not the frail woman he once held, but a stiff, heavy stone statue. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his body trembling as he felt an indescribable pain. It was as if something were gnawing at his heart. Rhea's eyes remained open, her gaze filled with terror, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. This death came too fast, too suddenly. Victor looked into those eyes, the gray filled with hopelessness, and he felt a fear greater than death itself, the fear of losing the one he had spent so much time trying to understand and share his life with. Her hand gradually stiffened, her fingers closing, never to move again. Every time Victor tried to shake her, every time he called her name, all he received was the silence of darkness, the cold, numbing chill of stone. He couldn't do anything. All he could do was look at her, look at Rhea, and feel his heart breaking. Don't let me fail you," Victor whispered, his eyes filled with tears, though he couldn't cry. In the midst of his desperation, he had to grit his teeth, stand up, and prepare to face what was ahead. This artifact had taken the most precious thing he had. Nothing but silence. The eerie stillness of a temple that had turned Rhea into a stone statue, and Victor left with only his fear and a faint hope for a miracle to save her. Victor sat next to Rhea's cold stone body, his eyes full of pain and despair. He couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. The feeling of watching her, his trusted companion, the one he had shared so many jokes with, turned to stone, rigid and motionless, made him feel like he had lost everything. But something inside him wouldn't let him give up. No, he wouldn't let her die like this. As the light from the Matrix box still flickered faintly in the darkness of the temple, Victor took out an old book that Rhea had carried with her. It was the book she had been studying throughout the journey, documenting everything she had learned about the Nephian civilization and the transmutation matrix. She had mentioned a restoration chamber, where the petrification process could be reversed, but the book only referenced another temple, an ancient one believed to hold the cure for those turned to stone. Victor flipped through the book, the delicate pages rustling softly, the light from the matrix reflecting off the ancient text. He found information about the Restoration Temple, located on the other side of the Nephis planet, at least 3 days' journey away if they took the safest routes. But that place was not easily accessible. The temple was situated in an area the Nephian civilization had long forbidden any entry to, guarded by traps and strange creatures. "There's no other choice," Victor whispered, his eyes filled with determination. He couldn't give up. He couldn't let this girl, the one he had shared so many memories with, die in vain. Victor picked up his gun, carefully slung his rifle over his shoulder, and packed the essentials for the journey ahead. With one last look at Rhea, he set off, heading toward the Restoration Temple they had to uncover. The twin suns of Nephis continued to burn relentlessly, but Victor was ready for this dangerous journey. He had crossed the barren lands of this planet before, but this time, everything was different. Every step he took was filled with doubt. He knew that the Restoration Temple was no simple place to reach. The roads leading to it were protected by ancient traps and dangerous creatures that had survived for thousands of years. The journey began with crossing a deep valley where sharp, dagger-like rock ridges pierced the sky. Dust and sand clung to Victor's clothes as he made his way through the area. Each step had to be taken carefully. He had heard of the death sand pits, deep pits where a single misstep could suck your entire body under the sand and make you disappear forever. Every footstep he took in this area was filled with caution, with the fear that a small mistake could send him to his death. Suddenly, an odd sound echoed from afar, causing him to jump. The shadowy figure of a strange creature darted across his vision. Victor immediately drew his gun, aiming at the source of the sound. A creature with stone-like skin, glowing red eyes, and spiky fur, native to Nephis, lunged out from the darkness. It growled as its massive feet slammed into the ground, sending waves of sand into the air. Victor quickly aimed and shot, landing a precise shot on the creature, which momentarily halted. But the creature wasn't ready to give up, charging forward like a storm. A powerful leap forced Victor to dodge quickly, falling to the ground as the creature passed over him. Sand flew everywhere, but in that instant, he managed to get back on his feet and fire several more shots. Finally, it collapsed, letting out a horrific scream before dying. This is not easy at all. Victor sighed, wiping the sweat from his brow as he stood up. He didn't have much time. Rhea was waiting, and he had to find the Restoration Temple before it was too late. The next day, he moved through a sparse forest where ancient trees seemed to hold no life except for giant lurking insects. Soon, Victor realized not all the creatures here were predators. One morning, a pack of half-human, half-beast creatures surrounded him. Their glowing eyes flashed in the dim morning light as they began to advance. Victor couldn't count how many of them there were, but he knew that if he didn't act immediately, he wouldn't survive the attack. He fired recklessly at the closest creature, bringing it down. The others hesitated, retreating without pressing the attack, but Victor understood that if he didn't continue, more dangers would follow. Finally, after 3 challenging days, the forest cleared to reveal a towering snow-covered mountain, shrouded in mist, believed to be the location of the Restoration Temple. Before him stood a ruined temple with crumbling walls, the remnants of a civilization long forgotten. Yet the soft sunlight cast over the ruins made every detail of the temple stand out. "We've made it," Victor whispered, feeling as though he had finally reached the end of the road. But as he entered the temple, a sudden chill filled the air, as if something awaited him, and all he had to do now was find a way to save Rhea. With no other choice, Victor took a deep breath and stepped into the temple, ready for the next challenge in his journey to save his companion. When Victor finally reached the Restoration Temple, he felt like part of his mission had been completed. But now, he was facing an even greater challenge. In the book Rhea had left behind, there were clear instructions about a mystical water that could reverse the stone transformation curse. But that water wasn't in the temple he had arrived at. It was located in a small well deep within a sacred forest, a place where no one dared venture. In addition to the well, there was another secret not everyone was willing to face. To obtain the water, one must pay a price: 10 years of life. This had been written in the ancient pages as a warning that not everyone would be willing to pay such a price. However, there was no other option. Victor knew that the only way to save Rhea was to make the sacrifice, and he wouldn't let her die in stone. Following the instructions in the book, Victor found the path leading to the sacred forest, where the mystical well was hidden in the shadow of ancient trees. The entire forest seemed cloaked in an ethereal mist, and no creature dared to come near. Each step Victor took was cautious, feeling strange energy surrounding him, as though he was stepping into a realm not belonging to this world. Finally, he found the small well beneath the roots of a giant ancient tree. The water in the well shimmered, as though it contained the entire sky and universe within it. But as Victor approached, a powerful wave of energy flooded his body, and the voice of an unseen entity echoed in his mind. "Anyone who wishes to take this water must pay a price. 10 years of your life will be exchanged to save another's. Do you accept?" Victor didn't hesitate. He knew that without this water, Rhea would remain trapped in stone forever. A sharp pain surged in his chest, but he responded firmly, "I accept." As soon as he uttered those words, a cold sensation enveloped his entire body. An invisible wave of energy from the well poured into him, and he felt himself being pulled into a deep abyss. Pain spread throughout his muscles and bones, and in that moment, he clearly felt 10 years of his life being drained away, replaced by the magical power of the mystical water. The sensation didn't last long, but it was enough for Victor to feel utterly exhausted. However, he knew he had secured the most important thing. The mystical water was now safely contained in a vial, ready for the journey back to the temple where Rhea remained trapped in stone. Victor didn't hesitate. He quickly turned back, navigating through the dangerous mountains and forests, despite the fatigue and the changes happening within his body. The process of sacrificing his lifespan had weakened him considerably, but nothing could stop him from saving Rhea. The long journey ahead seemed insignificant compared to the resolve within him now. After 3 days of arduous travel, Victor finally returned to the temple housing the transmutation matrix, where Rhea still lay motionless, trapped in stone. Although his body was drained and he could barely stand, his determination to save Rhea kept him grounded. Carefully, he poured the mystical water onto Rhea's stone body. This time, the cracks in her form didn't just shrink, they began to dissolve. A soft, pale blue light enveloped her, gradually turning into a warm golden glow. Her body slowly recovered, the hardened lines softened, and finally, Rhea's eyes fluttered open. Her gray eyes were filled with panic as she realized she had been resurrected. Victor, exhausted and near the brink of collapse, managed a weak smile. "Rhea, you're back." She looked at him, her eyes full of concern as she realized his condition. "Victor, are you okay? What did you do?" She rushed toward him, but he gently shook his head, offering a soft smile. "I'm fine, don't worry. Just having you back is enough." Rhea couldn't hold back her tears. She knew that Victor had sacrificed 10 years of his life to save her, and in that moment she understood that nothing was more precious than the love and sacrifice he had given her. Though worn out, Victor no longer felt pain. He looked at Rhea, giving her a faint smile, his eyes slowly fading with exhaustion. "I don't regret it, for you." After Rhea's resurrection, a strange sensation began to envelop both of them. A psychological bond, never before experienced, began to form between Victor and Rhea, as if their minds had intertwined. Every emotion, every thought of one person affected the other. This wasn't just a physical or spiritual change, it was a new kind of connection between them. Even a glance was enough for them to understand each other's thoughts and feelings. Every emotion, worry, or joy was shared, without needing to be expressed in words. Victor was the first to notice the change. One morning, as he sat next to Rhea, he suddenly felt a wave of anxiety rise within him, though there was no clear reason. At the same time, he saw Rhea frowning, as if she, too, was sensing the tension in the air. "Victor, why do I feel like something strange within me?" Rhea asked, her gray eyes looking at him in surprise. Victor was silent for a moment, but then he realized his emotions were being affected by her. "I feel it too, but I can't explain it," he answered, her feelings reflecting exactly what he was experiencing. This strange bond became an inseparable part of their relationship. Now, each of their emotions was no longer private, it was shared, a part of the bond they had formed. Everything grew deeper, more connected. Their perception of the world around them also changed. Every step they took, every decision they made, they knew they weren't alone. Gradually, the relationship between Victor and Rhea grew even stronger. The trials they had faced, from confronting dangers to Victor's sacrifice to save her, made them realize that they were more than just companions. They were essential parts of each other's lives. They had not only survived the hardships, but had also come to understand, love, and cherish each other more than ever. In the quiet moments when they sat together, a peaceful silence enveloped them. Yet their hearts beat in perfect harmony. They had overcome everything, from the pain and loss, and now they stood at a crossroads, with the future ahead of them. Rhea turned to Victor, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. "We've been through it all, haven't we? Despite the challenges ahead, I know I can face them as long as you're by my side." Victor smiled gently, holding her hand tightly. "Yes, after all, we've already overcome the hardest parts. Now it's just you and me. We'll face everything together." Looking into each other's determined eyes, they understood that nothing could tear them apart. Their friendship, love, and sacrifice had formed an invisible, unbreakable bond. They knew that, no matter what the road ahead held, they would always stand together, facing whatever hardships came their way. But now, one crucial question remained. Now that they held the transmutation matrix, would they keep this power or use it to change the world? This technology could bring life, but it could also destroy. They had to decide whether to use it to save others or keep it hidden, preventing it from falling into the wrong hands. Together, they stood looking toward the horizon, where the future lay uncertain and full of challenges. They knew they had endured so much, but now, their choices would determine not only their fate, but the fate of the world. The psychological bond between them was not just a connection between two people, but between everything they cherished and everything they would protect. "What should we do, Victor?" Rhea asked, her eyes filled with worry and curiosity about their next decision. Victor smiled, feeling peace in his heart. "We'll do what's right, Rhea, together." The story ends, but a new chapter is opening. The future, with all its choices and challenges, awaits them. And no matter what happens, they will face it together, for love, sacrifice, and everything they've built from the beginning. After Rhea was revived, a strange sensation began to surround both of them. An unprecedented psychological connection began to form between Victor and Rhea, as if their minds had merged. Every emotion, every thought of one person now affected the other. This wasn't just a change in the body or soul, it was a new bond between them. Even a glance was enough to understand each other's thoughts and feelings. Every emotion, concern, or joy was shared without needing to be spoken. Victor was the first to notice the change. One morning, as he sat next to Rhea, he suddenly felt a sense of anxiety rise within him, although there was no apparent reason. At the same time, he saw Rhea furrowing her brow, as if sensing the same tension in the air. "Victor, why do I feel like something is strange inside me?" Rhea asked, her gray eyes looking at him with surprise. Victor paused for a moment, then realized the emotions he was feeling were being influenced by her. "I feel it too, but I can't explain it," he replied, her feelings mirroring exactly what he was experiencing. This strange bond between them became an inseparable part of their relationship. Each person's emotions were no longer just personal, but were now intertwined with the other. Everything became deeper and more connected. Their perception of the world around them changed. With every step, every decision, they always knew that they weren't alone. Over time, the relationship between Victor and Rhea grew even stronger. The challenges they had faced, from confronting dangers to Victor's sacrifice to save her, made them realize that they were not just companions, but essential parts of each other's lives. They had not only survived the hardships, but had also come to understand, love, and cherish one another more than ever before. In those quiet moments when they sat together, an aura of peace surrounded them, yet their hearts resonated in perfect harmony. They had overcome everything, from pain and loss, and now they stood at a crossroads where the future lay ahead. Rhea turned to Victor, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. "We've been through it all, haven't we? Despite the challenges ahead, I believe I can face them as long as you're by my side." Victor smiled softly, holding her hand tightly. "Yes. After all, we've already overcome the hardest parts, and now it's just you and me. We will face every challenge together." Looking into each other's determined eyes, they understood that nothing could tear them apart. Their friendship, love, and sacrifice had created an invisible, unbreakable bond. They knew that no matter what the road ahead held, they would always stand together, facing every difficulty. But now, one crucial question remained. Now that they held the transmutation matrix, would they keep this power or use it to change the world? This technology could bring life, but it could also destroy. They had to decide whether to use it to save others or keep it hidden, ensuring it didn't fall into the wrong hands. Together, they stood gazing at the horizon, where the future was still uncertain and full of challenges. They knew they had overcome many hardships, but now their choices would determine not only their own fate, but also the fate of the entire world. The psychological connection between them was not just a bond between two people, but also a connection to everything they cherished and everything they would protect. "What will we do, Victor?" Rhea asked, her eyes filled with worry and curiosity about their next decision. Victor smiled, feeling peace in his heart. "We will do what's right, Rhea. Together." The story ends, but a new chapter is opening. The future, with all its choices and challenges, awaits them. And no matter what happens, they will face it together for love, sacrifice, and everything they've built from the start.